Okay, good evening, everyone. It's 5 o'clock. I'm guessing we can start now. Welcome everyone to today's webinar titled Building a Resilient Energy Workforce of the Future. We also like to welcome Susan, who is our speaker for today, who will be delivering this webinar. Welcome everyone and good evening again. My name is Anita Adaku Ofebo, and then I'll be taking us briefly through the safety brief for today's webinar. So for today's webinar, we know that some of us might be listening in from our offices, while some people will probably be listening in from their homes. But would like to just appeal that we choose a comfortable meeting space while we're listening in and ensure we have adequate lighting. It's also very important that we are aware of our surroundings and we are alert to our environment and know the proper exit point in case of an emergency, even though we don't pray for that. We would also like to plead that while we are in this meeting, that we mute ourselves, mute our mics, except we're talking, and pay proper attention to the webinar. If we have any questions as we go on, it would be nice to drop it in the chat box or raise your hands using the meeting controls we have. It's also important that we try to be present here, be attentive, ask as many questions as we can. And lastly, try to take stretch breaks, try to stand up maybe every 5-10 minutes as often as we can, so we don't stress ourselves. Thank you very much for attending this webinar. I would like to hand over to the section chair for SP Lagos to take us through the opening remarks. Thanks and welcome again.
Thank you, Adako. I'll be taking the remarks on behalf of Priscilla, who is unavoidably absent here today. Okay, so thank you so much for everyone who has joined us from different places across the globe. On behalf of SP Lagos section and SP Warri section, we welcome you to today's webinar. And we know that it will be worth your while. We have invited a seasoned speaker who is well accomplished in her career path. And she's going to be speaking on a topic that, she has not only worked towards, but she has a lot of experience to also share with us on this. I also see that in the course of starting the webinar, we had the past SPI International President join us, Sir Egbeti Momo. We recognize you and many other distinguished members who have joined us today. So to progress further in today's webinar, it's my humble privilege to actually share a brief citation of our speaker, Susan Helms. Susan is currently the Vice President Engineering of Subsurface Consultants and Associates, LLC in Houston, Texas, and she maintains the technical quality standards for consultancy recruitment and training services. She is a petroleum engineering graduate of the University of Texas, and she did start her career at Anadaco holding roles in reservoir business development, corporate engineering, and HR. She has held several roles, including while she was in Chevron as the manager of the Horizons program, and she's an industry leader in talent attraction, development, and retention. She currently serves on Colorado School of Mines, Petroleum Engineering Department Program Advisory Board, the Girl Scout of San Jacinto Council, and also the Society of Women Engineers Houston Area Nominating Committee. She has also previously chaired the University of Texas PGE Distinguished Alumni Committee. She has been recognized severally with different awards and recognitions. She's currently the SP Management technical section chair. She's a chair of the SPUS Advisory Council, and she has previously served as SP Regional Director for Gulf Coast in North America. She has received various awards, and we are sincerely glad and pleased that she's going to be delivering this lecture. So to take us further on the lecture on building a resilient energy workforce of the future, now you the virtual floor to Susan. Susan, over to you. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Princess. Let me see if I can share my slides here. Okay. So let me see if you see my slides.
Yes, we see your slide.
Okay. Great. So I will be speaking today on a couple of topics. Princess asked me to choose between two topics, and I decided to cover both of them. So we'll be talking about resiliency, and we'll also be talking about mentoring and sponsoring, because I think those two go hand in hand. So I'm very pleased to be able to speak to the LEGO section and the WARI section. It's been a while since I've been in Lagos, but I was in Abuja at the Nile University as part of my distinguished lecture tour. And I do have fond memories of my travels to Nigeria. So I'm glad to be able to connect with you virtually today, but hope to be able to see you in person sometime in the future. So today we're going to talk about a number of topics, and whether you are a student or a young professional, or whether you're looking at this from a supervisor or manager perspective, I think all of these topics will relate to you, because talent management is something that we're all engaged in throughout our career. We manage our own careers, and sometimes we have the opportunity to manage the careers of others as well. So we'll have some enterprise perspective on talent management, and we'll also talk about how you as a student or young professional can take charge of your own career. We'll talk about new jobs that are emerging in the energy transition, and how to get the skills for those jobs, and perhaps redeploy the skills we have as petroleum engineers and geoscientists. We'll also talk about building a human capital development plan. Now, again, this looks at it from the enterprise level, from your company's level, but you need to understand how your company does it so that your goals can be aligned with your employer's goals. We'll talk about the importance of both technical and non-technical skills. Those non-technical skills are sometimes called soft skills or business management leadership skills. So we'll have some discussion about that. In addition to mentoring and formal classroom training, there are ways to obtain skills through experiential learning and business simulations. And so we'll talk about the importance of those techniques. As I mentioned, we're going to cover quite a bit of material on mentoring, sponsoring, and networking. And so I think that should really resonate with the audience today. And I hope it will help you all to build resilience. So let's talk about resilience. Here's a definition from a psychology group. And so it looks at the human perspective on resilience. Maybe sometimes you think of resilience for infrastructure or other projects, but in this case, we're talking about our workforce, our talent, and how can we help everyone adapt. We've certainly been through some trying times in these past few years. We've had pandemic, we've had oil price fluctuation in some parts of our countries are in war and strife, and so there are lots of challenges. And so everyone needs to learn how to build those coping mechanisms to deal with all the ups and downs of our industry. Excuse me. So this is a slide that comes from a McKinsey report that really talks about resilience across the entire company, across the entire enterprise. And so we're going to be focusing today on this one center left on organizational resilience. But you need to understand that resilience is part of a bigger picture that can cover different dimensions. And hopefully your goals are aligned with your company's goals. And so, for instance, financial resilience is a big challenge. Our companies are generally for profit. And so we need to make money, and we need to employ risk management strategies for all the ups and downs. Operational resilience, this talks to maybe business continuity. We may have political challenges that we have to address. There may be weather challenges, so operational resilience is important. Digital resilience, we're all engaged in digital transformation efforts, and cybersecurity is a goal of many of our companies, and so that can be important. When we think about our industry's reputation, this relates to ESG and the many initiatives that our companies are engaged in, as well as SPE. And then finally, the business model. How does your company adapt to the changes in the environment? What new product lines do you add? What new strategies do you include? SPE is currently going through a strategic planning update. And so that's an example of an organization that does a frequent, every 3 to 5 years, there's a strategic planning exercise. So all these things are part of resilience, but we're going to focus today on talent, on organizational resilience. So several years ago, I was part of the SP Talent Council, and we did a survey of SPE members, and we were looking to understand why people stayed at companies and why they left. What would be attractive to a job seeker who was looking to change employers, and what would keep them? How do we increase retention? And we had probably 30 different reasons why people stay at companies and why they leave. And we gathered the demographics on the gender and the age and the type of employer and the country even. So this table is just a summary. There's a white paper that you can find in OnePetro that's probably 70 pages long with lots of charts and graphs. And there's also a summary that we published in the JPT. But the essence of all this is that people stay at a company if they feel like they have opportunity and challenge and there's potential in their career. And if they don't believe that, and if some other employer comes along and offers them that, then they're likely to change employers. And so good employers know that. And so they're trying to make sure that you do get those challenges that stretch you and give you some new opportunity to learn and grow in your career. So something to think about if you're a student just now interviewing for your first employer, and if you're a manager at a company that's looking to attract talent, it's something to build into your attraction scheme. So this is a table from a paper that Princess was actually a co-author of. She shared it with me recently as we were exchanging ideas. And I think for many of our companies, we are looking at ways to expand our product lines or perhaps our strategy to adapt to low carbon energy technologies. And so this table actually looks at it from the perspective of a petroleum engineer. On the left, you'll see the core oil and gas technical competencies. And across the x-axis, you'll see a number of different types of roles where some of those skills might be transferable. And the number and the color represents how strong that relationship is. And so I think quickly you can see that geothermal has a very strong relationship to the key competencies that one might have in a petroleum engineering background. And several of these other roles, there's also a good relationship. And so I think this is important to understand. Certainly, if you're an individual contributor, you want to look for opportunities to use your skills in different ways. And if you're a manager who's in charge of developing your workforce, you want to make sure that you have the right people for the right job. And sometimes that means redeploying part of your workforce into a different segment of the organization. And we're seeing a lot of companies that are making those changes and looking for these opportunities. So I would invite you to read this paper if you'd like more information on this topic. So I recently attended a SP workshop at Colorado School of Mines, and it was organized by the Petroleum Engineering Department Heads Association. And this is a slide from one of the presentations. But again, it talks about how oil and gas workers may be able to adapt to different types of roles. And so across the top, you might see the different types of jobs, the traditional oil and gas jobs, the adjacent oil and gas jobs, the new energy, the remediation, and the others. And then on the y-axis, you're going to see some comments about each of those. So for instance, in the first column, oil and gas traditional jobs are going to be with us for years to come, for decades to come. And so there will certainly be a need to maintain the production that we have to meet the energy demand around the world. And so many mid-career workers and late career workers will continue to enjoy the opportunity to use their skills in those areas. Whereas some of us in mid-career may choose to adapt and change to some of these low carbon technologies, geothermal, carbon capture and storage, hydrogen, wind, all of these types of industries can use some of the skills that we have from oil and gas. And sometimes governments are providing incentives for these types of investments, and we're seeing lots of interest in this area. I think in many cases, the new energy roles are also appealing to this mid-career, to the early career young professionals. And solar, wind, efficiency in energy and electrification, all areas where our skills can be redeployed. And I'm a petroleum engineer and I have solar on my house. So I think we need all types of energy. And so this is an important aspect to consider. I think environmental remediation is an important topic, and certainly a lot of our workforce is focused on this already. But there will continue to be opportunities for restoring the oil and gas properties to the native state for land reclamation and redeploying some of those assets elsewhere. And then finally, there's some other adjacent industries that may be of interest as well. So interesting table for all of us. So if you're a person who is involved in coordinating a group of people at your company, this may be useful to you. This is a 5-year human capital development plan, and it doesn't have to be 5 years. It could be 3 years or 7 years, but the idea, it's more than 1 year. And so you should certainly have some sort of a ongoing plan for how you're going to develop your workforce over several years. When I was at Chevron managing the Horizons program, it was a 5-year plan. And so that's a nominal place to start. And so as we look at each of these horizontal lines, I'll just call them the swim lanes. The first one is competency assessment. And so you want to understand what roles your professionals are playing and what are the skills that are required to do those roles well. And so this will take a lot of analysis. You'll need a team that will go through and look at each of the jobs and look at the key job responsibilities and how one develops those skills to do those roles. And so competency assessment is where we start. And we build a list of skills, and then we start developing where there are gaps, where some of the workforce don't have all the skills they need to do their job. And then each year we go back and assess and realign and adjust because roles change over time. And so this is a big place to start. One resource you might find, SPE has access to free competency management system analysis for individuals. And so if you're an SP member, you can find that on SP's website. E-learning is something that we think is very important to have a repository of knowledge that's available at any time. You don't have to wait to sign up for a class. So it might be, for instance, on the SP website, the Petro Wiki, or it might be One Petro, where you can find papers on interesting topics. All of these are very important. I co-authored this paper with Rob Taylor of IHRDC, and they offer IPIMS, an International Petroleum Instructional Multimedia System. And what we're talking about is how to build technical, commercial, and soft skills in organizations. This was a paper we presented in Saudi Arabia a couple of years ago. And just as important as the technical skills are the business skills. And so you want to have a plan for how you're going to develop your professionals in alignment with your company's business. So whether you're an oilfield service provider and you need to develop salesmen, or whether you're an operator and you need project management skills, these are all skills that are important to the business. And so you need to make sure that your employees get those skills, whether they're taught in-house or whether you send them to public courses. And then the next line, the technical program offerings, that's probably the heart of a capital development plan, because technology advances. It doesn't stay the same as what it was when you graduated from college. And so we need to have an ongoing program of classroom instruction, whether it's in person or whether it's offered live online, like many of us have been doing the pandemic. Instruction that's focused on a topic, a technical topic, with exercises where you can really develop an understanding of the key roles and responsibilities in your job. That's very important. And when I was at Chevron, we had, I think it was 17 weeks of technical training over 5 years. So that's basically 3 to 4 weeks a year of technical training. We also talk a little bit about a geoscience certification program. So this is an example of a business simulation where after you've had some of that technical training, you actually use it in a project that is a real project, but it's done very, very quickly over 6 weeks instead of over 3 or 4 years. And so you have a chance to choose your exploration program, choose your seismic, choose an exploration well, drill it and select appraisal well locations, and come forth with a full field development plan that's presented to a group of managers. So this is a way to accelerate that learning by compressing the job that you would normally play over 3 or 4 years into a very tight, quick project type experience. And we'll talk a little bit more about that. Mentors are very important to technical development, and many companies will assign mentors to new hires as they join. But usually after you get your first mentor, over time, you'll move into a new role, and then it's up to you to find mentors. And throughout your career, you will need access to mentors. So it's very important that you have a good network so you can find these mentors. Sometimes you'll get to meet face-to-face, particularly if it's an in-house mentor, but occasionally you'll be meeting with mentors virtually. And sometimes you might even have external mentors, perhaps people you've met through SPE. And then finally, the last line here on the last swim lane is job assignments. And so ideally, you wouldn't join a company and stay in the same job that you started with for 10 years. Ideally, over time, you would change into different roles, different departments, different types of work, perhaps onshore versus onshore, offshore. You might have conventional versus unconventional, but a chance to really get some breadth to your knowledge and to see some cycles in the overall budget process. So ideally, these roles should last at least a year, so you can see a complete cycle. Maybe it's 18 months or 2 years, but periodic reassignments that are managed by the organization are a great way to build resilience and to build skills. So I mentioned earlier the Geoscience Certification Program. This is fondly called the boot camp because it's so quick and fast, but this is, you see a list of the courses that are included in this program, the training courses. There's 6 weeks of training and then a 6-week project. And these courses are mainly geoscience courses, but there are also some engineering courses and some overview courses. There are a couple of geologic field trips. We think that's very important for developing geoscientists and engineers. And we presented much of this material in that same paper we presented at IPTC. So you can find more information in OnePetro for that particular paper. And field trips, as we mentioned, field trips are a great way to get to see real world geology, and many geologists get field trips in their education, but it's not so common for engineers to get them. I know at Colorado School of Mines, they have a geologic field trip as part of their curriculum, but it may be less common for engineers. Excuse me. And we currently have a boot camp that's running in our office right now. And we have 4 engineers and 4 geoscientists from NNPC in that particular boot camp. And so they're learning a lot from each other as they're participating in that boot camp. And then here's just some more slides from various groups, various field trips. We've been running this certification program for more than a decade, and people really enjoy the chance to get out and see some of this. We actually published some of this material in a paper that we presented at the IMAGE conference, which is organized by APG and SEG. And in many cases, attracting geoscientists to work in the oil and gas industry, this is a great way to do it by taking them on field trips and letting them see the scale of what they're working on. Many times, geoscientists and engineers, they're working in a workstation, but they don't realize how big everything is. And so to be able to see the depositional environments in person and discuss it and look at outcrops and really dig trenches in the beaches, those are all very important learning experiences for all of them. And there's also a business simulation, the project part of this certification program. And so this is something that is designed to show the real world experience that a geoscientist or an engineer would be involved in if they were discovering a new field. They've selected their seismic, they've drilled an exploratory well, they've had to make presentations to get recommendations for spending money. All these things are done more quickly if we design a simulation that gives them an experience to practice those skills before they actually have to do them on the job. And although this was designed as a very technical geoscience certification program, we found that they're also getting those soft skills, those non-technical skills. And so we actually conducted a survey of many of the participants that had participated over the past decade in this program. And many of them remember it very fondly. And some of the feedback we got was not just about the technical skills, but about the soft skills. And so this just shows a ranking of one of the questions that we asked, really based on the feedback that they had provided, that they were learning teamwork, they were learning communication and presentation skills, decision-making, critical thinking, managing time. This is a very fast-paced experience, problem solving and developing confidence. So all these are really not technical skills, but it was a wonderful way to develop future leaders. And we actually presented this material in a paper at the SP annual conference in 2021. So a competency-based approach to addressing the leadership gap. So this is, you can read more about it in this particular paper. So if you're the person in your company who's designing a program like this, you need to think about the big picture. And so this might be able to help you to think about that. We published this in an article in JPT just recently. And you start with designing your process. So it's really understanding what are the competencies that your people need to do their job. And so that comes through that job analysis and competency model development. And then you measure each of the individuals against that ruler. And it could be they self-assess, or perhaps their supervisor provides the assessment, or maybe you even have outside third-party assessors. But the idea is that as a group, you learn to identify where the gaps are, so where you can build a learning plan for the entire skill pool. And then over time, they're going to learn new skills, they'll apply those skills, and so you'll repeat this process on an annual basis. So as you progress these people throughout the development program, they'll continue to build on those skills. So several years ago, I was part of the SP Soft Skills Council. It's now called the Business and Leadership Committee. And we put together this chart thinking about soft skills over a career. And so you might start as an individual contributor, and then over time you're working in teams. You may be a team leader or supervisor, and then perhaps you progress to a higher level in the organization where you're a manager or a chief engineer responsible for a number of people. And then some of us progress to a higher level. We are not only integrating across our company, but across the industry. And so when we look at all of these soft skills, we find some of them are developed very early, and resilience is one of those. It's one that we included in the emotional intelligence category. And students even can be working on developing resilience. So resilience is a very important part of developing skills. So thinking about mentoring and development, mentoring is something that's very important for your career development. And we presented this paper at ATCE recently talking about mentoring, sponsoring, and networking. And so I'm going to summarize the elements of this, but you can read this paper to get more information. And so many companies assign mentors to their new hires, and it may be something that your company starts each new hire with a mentor, but over time, you're going to need to find your own mentors. And so this is something that you should build a network so that you can find mentors. Anytime you're faced with a new challenge, how do you look out and find someone to help you with that? And so mentors can be your peers, or they can be someone slightly more experienced than you, but there doesn't have to be 20 years between you. They can be very similar in experience. They just happen to know more about the particular challenge that you're trying to work on. So they can help motivate you, show you some paths that you can take, some various options. They can challenge you when things get difficult and help you to think about the questions that you need to ask. They can introduce you to people who might be able to answer some of those questions, and they can give you examples of career roadmaps that various people have taken and introduce you to those people. They help you to progress and design your own career path, and they can help you to understand how your company moves people around. And so that's an important element. And certainly they benefit when you benefit. So mentors like to see you succeed. And so they're not competing with you. They really hope that you'll be successful. Sponsors, you may not know who your sponsors are within your company. Most companies have people at a higher level in management who are responsible for entire departments or divisions, and they have a lot of influence. They help make decisions on where people move. And so they're watching you, but you may not be aware that they're paying attention to your contributions. But they are there in those meetings when jobs get assigned, and so they can speak up on your behalf if they know about your contributions. And again, you may not know who these people are. You can't go ask someone to be your sponsor. It's just the way big companies work. But in many cases, they are your advocates. And so know that they're there and they are paying attention to what you're doing. And behind the scenes, you'll see the impact of what they say. So comparing the two, mentors have mentees. You're going to know who they are. You can have these at any level. You can go ask people to be your mentor if they have time to do that. And sometimes they will agree to do so. They can be there to point you in the right direction. Whereas sponsors, this is a less visible thing. You may not know who your sponsors are, but you can see it as your career progresses and you get opportunities for things that maybe you didn't know you needed to do. They are transferring their power to you, and they are giving you that validity. They're supporting your careers and speaking up on your behalf. So to get to know both mentors and potential sponsors, it's important to have a network. And this is part of what we all do to build relationships in our industry. So it can be both internal to your company and external, perhaps within SPE, but you need to find people who can be your mentors. So get to know people in your organization in various departments, not just your own department, and try to build relationships with those people. You can have both deep and close relationships and broad connections. So those acquaintances sometimes can be a great source of information, even if you're not very tightly connected with them. So stay in touch, meet them for coffee, for lunch, call to check in. When you see that they've dealt with a challenge recently, give them your support and celebrate their accomplishments. It's great with social media now that we can keep track of people around the world. And so it's a really wonderful experience. And this last column, we've included a reference here for a book that was written by Kelly Hoey on Build Your Dream Network. Forging powerful relationships in a hyper-connected world. And Kelly wrote a great book on networking that I'd recommend. And she talks about the 3 Ps of people, people, and people, but also persistence, planning, and politeness. If you're going to ask someone to be your mentor, be prepared. They may not have time to mentor you, but be polite. Acknowledge, that you're glad you made the connection, and sometimes you need to be persistent because busy people are hard to get hold of. So you may need to reach out more than once to make those connections. So when you're thinking about your network, many of us have a number of ways that we can analyze our network, and most of us are used to the operational network. So this is an org chart. This is where you have your boss and your boss's boss and the vice president. You can see what that looks like, and you can see where your peers are. That's pretty easy to understand. And then most of us also have a good personal network. We have family, we have friends. There may be people from school that you've stayed connected with. SPE connections. So there are a number of different contacts there. But what you may not have is a strategic network. And so oftentimes when you're involved in a big project and you need to influence certain stakeholders, you may analyze for your project the various stakeholders that are involved in approving it. So this is where you're going out of your way to reach out to those people to understand what their perspective is and to make sure you can address their concerns. And so building that strategic network for both your personal goals and for your company projects is an important aspect as well. So with many of us, as we look at our own network, we find that there's different ways that we can look at our network for weaknesses. And so, for instance, if all of your contacts come from your company, you need to get out more and meet people outside your own employer in the industry, or perhaps even in different industries. And having a diverse network, people of different ages, different employers, different universities can give you different perspectives. We all prefer to meet face to face, and sometimes you're closest to the people that you can meet in person. But having some sort of a common purpose, and in many cases, an SPE network can be a great example where you're working on planning meetings together, writing papers. Those can be great ways to experience more diversity in your network. And remember, it's not about the number of connections that you have, but it's about the quality of those experiences. And so you need to have people that you can have a good relationship with, whether they're your peers or someone more junior to you or someone higher in the organization. So draw a map, some sort of a picture of your network, and look for gaps. Look for areas where you need to expand your network. So in summary, today we've talked about a number of different strategies for developing resilience as part of talent management. Our industry is going through lots of change. We've had the pandemic, we've had the ups and downs of the oil price, we've had wars and political unrest in certain areas, so lots of change. So change management skills are going to be important as we go through the energy evolution, some people say, instead of transition over the next several decades. We'll need to continue to develop both our technical and our non-technical skills. And in addition to training, we can also use experiential learning and business simulations to help accelerate that process for developing those skills. You can develop things on the job, but that takes many years to develop. So there's a way to accelerate that process. And then finally, mentoring, network, and sponsoring are very crucial to developing resilience. So you'll find all of those things to be important. So I'd like to thank my team at Subsurface Consultants and Associates and the authors of several of these papers for sharing their resources with me, and encourage everyone to be resilient. So with that, I will stop sharing, and I think we'll take some time for some questions.
Thank you, Susan. And that was a very fantastic lecture. Before we go into the question session, for benefit of persons who may have joined after, I will just summarize what you said, and then Tracy would take us through the questions. But please drop your questions in the chat box and short time, but she's available to answer. So at the beginning, Susan began with showing us different dimensions of resilience, financial resilience, operational resilience, digital and technological resilience, and also organizational resilience. And she spoke to the organizational resilience for most part. She also spoke to us about sharing with us the outcome of a survey as to why respondents would actually stay with an employer, and people would stay longer where there were good opportunities. And then persons can actually develop their competency both from an organizational standpoint and an individual standpoint. And she showed us an example of a 5-year human capital development plan, which included various things: e-learning, competence assessments, technical program offerings, mentorship, field trips, and business simulations. And then various slides spoke to a number of those activities. She also went ahead to highlight some of the soft skills which persons said they had developed even with the competency programs that were put for them. And some include teamwork, critical thinking, time management, problem solving, self-confidence. And she spoke to building learning and development programs, especially for those who would, have to develop these programs. She told us that, and there should be an assessment to identify how to form the basis for the learning plan that will be built. A very interesting session is on the mentoring, sponsoring, and networks, where she told us the characteristics of mentors, what they can do. Mentors can introduce you to people. They also benefit from the mentorship. They can also guide you on your career roadmap. Sponsors would, help you grow in your career. They can advocate for you. She admonished us to build internal and external networks. You can have deep relationships and broad connections. One of the things she says, check in with people, meet with people, celebrate their accomplishments, do a diagnosis of your network, draw a map and look for the gaps. And with this, that's about the summary of what Susan has shared on building a resilient energy workforce of the future. So I would yield the floor to Tracy. She would take us through the Q&A. Our presenter is here to answer. Please drop your questions in the chat box. Thank you very much, Susan. Tracy, over to you.
Thank you, Princess. And please, thank you all for staying on the call. Checking on the chat box, and we don't have any questions for now. But if you have a question to ask, you can just raise up your hands and you'll be called upon. Thank you.
I did have one person who wanted to connect with me on LinkedIn, so I've put my LinkedIn address in the chat, and everyone's welcome to connect with me. I'd like to stay in touch.
You sure do.
So there's a question in the chat. Can you please shed more light on business simulation? So that's a great question, and it's something that I think any way that we can develop a program that prepares our professionals for the challenges that they will face in their real job, that makes it really meaningful. And so I gave you an example of the geoscience certification program that we're doing at SCA. And part of it is getting engineers and geoscientists to work together in multidisciplinary teams, because many times when you're in college, you only work with your discipline, and you don't even have to understand what the other disciplines are doing. So being able to work together and to explain processes and workflows to each other is very helpful. And the simulation allows you to go through the exploration, the appraisal, the development phase very quickly. You can do it in like a month, whereas in real world it might take years and years to follow a project through all of that. And so it enables you to see the full cycle, the full life cycle of a project. And so I think these business simulations can be very helpful. When I was at Chevron, we had one that we did for part of the Horizons program, and we found it to be very useful. And we always mix the disciplines together on that as well.
Amobi is asking a question: how does our work environment assist us to develop resilience?
That's great. And I think understanding the work environment is very important. We've all been through the pandemic recently where we couldn't go into our office. We had to work remotely, and that was challenging for a lot of us. We were dealing with not feeling connected to the roles, even though we could connect virtually. And so I think many companies have learned that mental health is a big part of what they do, and providing a work environment that supports the mental health of all of the employees is important. For instance, many companies have what they call EAP, employee assistance plans, and those could be mental health counselors that you can call upon when you have concerns or questions related to your role.
Thank you, Susan. William is asking, how will an employee manage relationship with his or her employer?
So I'm sorry, could you repeat the question?
How will an employee manage relationship with his or her employer?
I understand now. I think in many cases, if you're coming from university, you may expect that someone else manages all of your curriculum. You don't really get many choices on curriculum when you're in university. Whereas when you come to work for an employer, sometimes there are some choices. And so it's good to explore those options that you'll have and to make sure that your goals are aligned with the goals of your employer. And so an employee can manage that by educating themselves, by getting to know people in different parts of the organization and understanding what are some of the challenges, what are some of the problems that they're trying to solve, and where can they make the most significant contribution on those challenges.
Thank you, Susan. Olaolu is asking, when it comes to selecting teams for new energies or emerging energy technologies in the oil and gas industry, do you have a framework for the selection of the team? Do you do it on a projectized basis, or the framework for selection cuts across several new energy technology? The question is quite long. So when it comes to selecting team for new energies or emerging energy technologies in the oil and gas industry, do you have a framework for the selection of the team? Do you
Great
do
question.
it? Yes. Do you do it on projectized basis, or the framework for selection cuts across several new energy technologies?
Sure, great question. And I think for many companies, that is the dilemma right now. Do they need to go out and hire new workers that bring skills in that the company doesn't have, or do they need to redeploy some of their existing talent workforce and have them learn some of the new skills that they need? And the answer is probably both. And many times, the question is how can you do that quickly as you're expanding product lines or changing direction in your company? And so the question about whether you bring in people for a specific project or whether you do it across several technologies is a good one, because ideally you'd be hiring people who would enjoy a long career at your company and get a chance to work in several projects. But you may not have all that worked out yet. So it's probably a combination of those things that you're thinking about, using your existing workforce and redeploying them, adding experts and new hires where it's needed, and then thinking about how you can manage through the ups and downs of the cycles. Some of our new technologies, we're just now figuring out how to make money at them as governments are providing incentives and as technology costs are coming down.
Thank you, Susan. We still have another question from Joshua.
Okay.
He's asking, now that the industries are requesting for years of experience, how do we overcome this barrier as a job seeker?
Right. I think in many cases, the year of experience is set as a hurdle that job seekers have to overcome to get considered in the mix. And I would say if you have less than the years of experience that are needed, you need to somehow network within the organization to convince the hiring manager that you have the motivation and the drive to learn the skills that you may not have had in your experience. And if you have many more than the years of experience, likewise, you need to convince the hiring manager that just because you've been spending quite a few years doing other things, you're not averse to learning new skills. And so the years of experience can cut both ways. And so usually it's a case where building a network that can put you in touch with hiring managers can help you to advance your position in that area.
Thank you, Susan. Uju is asking, could you please speak to key skills managers? Could you please speak to key skill managers' needs to ensure they continue to motivate and cultivate a high performance team?
Right. So if we think back to that survey that we did for the SP Talent Council, I think we found that universally people were motivated to stay at a company if they were given challenge and opportunity to advance, and also respect. And so I think respect for your contribution is very significant. And so managers can go out of their ways to recognize the contributions that a team has made and to recognize that in a very public way. And so sometimes managers think it's all about compensation, but sometimes people just want to be recognized for their work. And compensation is important. I'm not saying it's not, but it won't keep a worker if they don't feel like they're being respected for their contributions.
Thank you, Susan. Amobi is asking a question again. Can we have a productive workforce without a conducive working environment?
Interesting question, because I think there's always a certain amount of tension that's natural in our roles. Early on when I had an assignment as a young engineer, as a production engineer, my boss said, your job is to keep costs low, increase production, and do it safely. And sometimes those three goals are not in alignment. You may spend a little more money to do things safely. And so there is a natural tension in many of the KPIs, the key production indicators that we are measured by in our workforce. But hopefully we're all working towards the same goals as a corporation. And so you may disagree about the way to get the job done, but hopefully you can disagree respectfully, and you can challenge each other at the appropriate moments so that you can work together to reach a common goal.
Ogene Fejiro is asking, how does one ensure an effective monitoring cycle, especially as a mentee?
Right, and I think it starts with having a common understanding of what the mentee and the mentor expect out of a relationship. And so you may decide that you're going to meet once a week or once every 2 weeks or once a day, but you need to come up with some understanding of how frequently you will meet. And then what are some of the things that the mentor can help with, and understand that the mentor is not there to do the mentee's work. They're really just trying to point them in the right direction. And so as you can even start with a piece of paper you might call a mentoring contract, where you say, we will agree to meet certain times, in person, virtual, for lunch. And then what are some of the things that are in the frame, in bounds, and what are the things that are off the frame. So for instance, for a student, the mentor shouldn't be doing the student's homework. There shouldn't be an expectation that they're going to do their work for them.
Thank you so much, Susan.
Great questions.
Yeah, Princess is asking, can you share any personal sponsorship experience?
Well, I can say certainly within SPE, I have benefited from numerous occasions where I was asked to take on a role that I didn't even know I was being considered for. And so I think sponsorship is a wonderful thing when you have people that are watching your contributions and they think of you for something that you didn't even know you could do. That's a very positive thing. So recognize that there are people who know who you are within your company or within SPE, and they are looking for opportunities for you. And sometimes you will know who they are, your sponsors, and sometimes you won't. But there will be opportunities that you don't expect that will come along.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Susan. We don't have any more questions on the chat box.
Thank you. Great
for your
questions.
time. Thank you. We'll be going straight to our photo session. I'd like everyone to please turn on their video. Please, let's turn on our video for the photo session. Thank you.
I think you need to stop sharing. Yeah.
Okay. Good evening, Tracy. You want to do the call, or I take the call?
You can take the call, please.
Okay. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, Tracy, for wonderful webinar. Thank you for sharing your videos. Can we put some smiles on our faces as well? Thank you. While I take a few clips, thank you. Smiles are coming up. Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Keep the smiles. I will just go to the next gallery. All right, next gallery, I'm on you. Can you smile, please? Thank you. Okay. Okay. All right, I think I've gotten everybody. And that will be all for the photo section. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you all for staying on the call. We'd like to take our announcement from the section 104, the Warri section and the Lagos section. We have our upcoming events. For the Warri section, we have a free web development program that is ongoing. It started on the 3rd of December and is ending on the 11th of December. It's ongoing. On the 9th, we have courtesy visits. And December 10th, we have our social hour, our December Fun Feast.
Okay. Oh, sorry, is it just me? I can't hear. Princess, can you step in? I think I've lost Tracy.
Okay, thank you. Okay, great. Sorry about that. I'm sure it's a technical glitch. Okay, so for SP Worry section, there is an ongoing program, a free web development training, and that's ongoing. They also have planned a courtesy visit, a social hour, a December Fun Fest. And then on the 12th and 16th of December, there are ambassador lecturer programs that are planned. You would want to keep in touch with Worry on the various social media platforms so that you can, get ahead of whatever programs they are planning and also be a part of it. So you can find them on Facebook, Instagram, and also on LinkedIn. You see them as SP Worry Nigeria section. The flyer on the screen shows the Fun Fest, which they have coming up on Saturday, 10th of December. So if you're around, please try to be a part of it. Wine, dine, and network, just as Susan has advised us. Now, going on to the upcoming programs for SP Lagos section, there is an opportunity to give back. And SP Lagos is conducting an end-of-year children's party and back-to-school gift boxes. You can be a part of it by contributing. Basically, there are schools that would, there are students or kids that have been identified that they'll be gifted, and they would also be sponsored to an event. So you have an opportunity to light up their holiday and make it the best of season for them. The account details are there, and you can get more information on Lagos section social media channels. Please, the next slide. You also have the opportunity to also contribute to the Own a Scholarship Award. SP is committed to encouraging STEM education, and one of the ways they also do this is by providing finance and funds to encourage students to join the industry. So there are various categories of students, and their scholarships being provided to help alleviate whatever financial burdens they have. You also have the opportunity to join SP today. In case you're not a member, you can join SP, and you can also join the section, whether it's Worry section or Lagos section. We also have 3 other sections in Nigeria: Abuja, Port Harcourt, and you also have the information to be a part and be a member. So would you choose to want to learn about upcoming events by SP Lagos? You can find us on various social media channels, and the contacts for the section admin and also the board members, should you want to know more about SP member benefits, is also on the screen. With this, I'll yield the virtual floor to Madam Magdalene to take us on the vote of thanks. Madam Magdalene, over to you. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Princess. Good evening, everyone, once again. I would like to start by thanking our speaker tonight, Susan, for this excellent delivery. She's giving us very great insights, and indeed I can attest to the fact that this has been worth our while. For me personally, I'm going to be looking at doing a diagnosis on my network to establish the gaps, just as she has mentioned, and then I will definitely look for ways to close the gap. Definitely, Susan, I'm going to be connecting with you after now. Thank you so much for this great presentation. I also would like to thank the Lagos section, and in particular the D&I committee, for this wonderful collaboration. Thank you for the opportunity you've given to us, Worry section, to be a part of this event. We are indeed very grateful, and we look forward to having more collaborations, even on different levels. I would like to thank the participants that have joined this call. Are very distinguished guests and professionals. Thank you so much for being a part of this event. I would also like to thank the section directors from across the two sections. I've seen a couple of them on the call. I want to also thank the SP members across all the different sections. I did see people even from Abuja and Benin section who were also part of this webinar. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you to all our friends and colleagues that have also joined who are not yet SP members. We look forward to having you join this great society. I would like to thank the planning committee. You guys have done a great job in delivering this webinar effortlessly. Thank you so much for all that you have put in. Thank you everyone for staying on even till the end of this program. Yeah, so we'll meet in future events. Back to you, Princess, and have a very wonderful evening, everyone.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you, Susan.
Thank you. Thank you, Susan.
Goodbye. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Susan.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you very much, everybody.
Goodbye.
Have a good night.
Thank you.
Elsie, good to see you. Bye.
All right, thank you, everyone. This league goes down in 3, 2, 1, 0. All right. Have a lovely day.
Thank you. Bye. Bye, Susan.
Bye.